Gareth, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you very much for sponsoring the session. I have to say, after these introductions, I only have one thought. I'm destined to disappoint. And by the way, what they didn't mention is that I am profoundly gloomy. So if you're expecting an inspiring speech about leadership, forget it. I'm going to spend the next hour trying to persuade you that leadership's difficult, because it is. I'm going to try and inform you that anyone who tells you here are the 5 rules for leadership, here are the 3 behaviors, here are the 6 competencies is snake oil. You have to find your way to be a leader. So as we begin this session, by the way, the first 20 minutes is fairly gloomy. It gets better, okay? I want you to have 2 thoughts in your mind. I've been an HR director twice. And when I first joined the BBC, by the way, I thought that the HR people were a bit like Millwall fans. No one loves us, we don't care. They seem to relish in their hair shirts. Oh, no one listens to us. They listen to the finance people, they don't listen to us. Oh, they seem to love it. And one of the things I think I did try and achieve at the BBC is that by the time I left, HR people were a bit more up for it. So as I go through this material on leadership, I want you to have 2 questions in mind. I'm sure one of your obsessions is how you foster leadership development in your institutions. And that's, of course, a mainstream HR obsession and should be. But the second one, and in a way more important one, is I want you to think of yourself as a leader. I want you to think of yourself driving change in your institutions and across the sector. It's vital. By the way, I should have said this to begin with. I'm so pleased to be here because it brings together 2 of my obsessions. One, people at work, which I've been fascinated with since I was an undergraduate. And secondly, the transformative power of higher education. We are in the life-changing business. We are in the life-changing business. I'm a governor at Leeds University Business School now. And when I meet the students, I just get such energy from them. They're just marvelous ambassadors for what higher education can do. So I'm incredibly pleased to be here. Why am I interested in leadership? I'm not interested in leadership because it's nice, by the way. It frequently isn't. The history of the 20th century, at least, is littered with people who were rather effective leaders and not very nice. But when we look at organizations, what's very clear is that leadership impacts performance. Well-led universities do better than ones that aren't well-led on every range of measure, employability, student satisfaction, and so on. So I'm interested in leadership because it affects performance. So we're going to be focusing on this question: why should anyone be led by you? Now, I was told by Sandra that you're a pretty intelligent bunch. So have you noticed anything odd about this room? No one's sitting at the front. That's because they've heard me speak before, yeah. Notice anything odd about the room? Oh, they're not as bright as you thought then, Sandra. No. There are no windows. And we only ever do this session on the ground floor. Because if you do it further up in a room with windows, you get jumping behavior. It's what we call in HR headcount reduction. Because when we ask the question, why should anyone be led by you, we are greeted with a deafening silence. In fact, if you look under your tables now, you just like to check that it's there. We've installed a little device. Could you check? Is there one under your table? It's called an ego resuscitation device. You see, it's quite different from this question: why should anyone be managed by you? That's much easier. I'm a senior vice president, you're a vice president. Do what you're told. I'm an executive vice president, you're a senior vice president. Do what you're told. I'm the HR director, you will never make it. That's much easier. By the way, getting harder The kind of clever young people you should be employing, they're not terribly impressed by your swanky job titles. At the professional services firms like PwC and Deloitte and so on, they have something called the new partner phenomena. So it takes 10 or 15 years to make it to partner, and then you swell slightly, and you buy a new suit, and you walk to the office across the river, because now you walk on water. And a year later, you find out you're the same person. Becoming a partner doesn't make you a leader. Becoming an HR director doesn't make you a leader. That's just another notch up the greasy pole of the Byzantine structure of organizations. So first, rather radical thought of the day, leadership is a profoundly non-hierarchical concept. Great organizations build leadership in as many places as they possibly can, not just leadership at the top. This isn't the same as saying everyone can be a leader. Why can't everyone be a leader? Why can't everyone be a leader? Not everyone wants to be. It's the Nietzschean concept of will, volition. If you really want to be a leader, you've got a chance. If you don't really want to be a leader, you've got no chance. I hate it when people say, oh, Sandra, she's a natural leader. Listen, I've worked with some of the most effective leaders in European and American business for the last 25 years. I can tell you, none of them are naturals. They might look like they're naturals. One of my all-time heroes was Jan Timmer, the former president of Philips Electronics, and he could speak to a room like this and set it on fire. He looked like a swan gliding across the lake. But I promise you that underneath the surface, those legs were pumping. Jan Timmer would come off the stage, and the first thing he'd do is say, Gareth, what could I have done differently? Did I talk about Brazil enough? Did I connect with the Chinese? He was forever honing his leadership skills. Here's a simple definition of leadership. Effective leadership excites people to exceptional performance. Could you put your hand up if you're not interested in exceptional performance? There's one or two people from Comp and Ben. That was a joke, by the way. When the blue light flashes, it's a joke, okay? See, we're all interested in exceptional performance, aren't we? Everywhere. Schools, hospitals, football teams, churches, political parties, businesses. Who's got children at school? Are you interested in the leadership of your children's school? Does it make a difference? We have one college for school leadership in the UK, which I'm pleased to say I helped to found at the University of Nottingham. We need 30. Teachers have a huge impact on the way people consume education. Now, in organizations like yours, in universities, exceptional performance is not a luxury. It's a survival technique. Perform exceptionally, and you will thrive and survive. Don't perform, you won't exist. You won't exist. Now, this is even sharper, of course, in the world of business. As Karl Marx elegantly puts it, one capitalist kills many. It concentrates at the top, and it sucks in new competition at the bottom. That's why capitalism remains the world's most successful social and economic system, and has no rivals. It's rather odd, isn't it? Well, no economic rivals anyway, just religious rivals. We can think about leadership in at least 3 ways. First of all, the leadership of individuals. And I think in universities, this is particularly relevant because there are exceptional individuals, exceptional teachers, exceptional researchers, exceptional administrators who make a huge difference to performance. When I wrote a book a little while ago called Clever, Leading Your Smartest, Most Creative People, and we interviewed the Vice-Chancellor of the University of London, who was a very tough New Zealander, material scientist. And he used to say, he'd previously been Vice-Chancellor of Glasgow University, and he used to say, I walk around the campus late at night to see where the lights are still on. And I know I've got a research hotspot. He said, and it's not, biology and chemistry where you might think it would be. It might be ancient history, might be Spanish. But I'll know the people that I really, really have to make sure they're well led. That book, Clever, by the way, begins with the story of a man who invented the SimCity franchise for Electronic Arts, and he also invented a game called Spore. It's probably worth $1 billion to Electronic Arts. Make sure he's well led. So think about the 5, 10, 15 people that your institution mustn't lose and be all over them like a rash. And then, of course, the biggest return on your leadership investment is your team. So let me be momentarily optimistic. Let's imagine that by the end of this conference, you're equipped to lead your team 15% better on a consistent basis. What impact would that have on the performance of your institution? Small, medium, or large? Small, medium, or large? Large. Now 15% is not a lot, is it? I'm not asking for 100%. Lead your team 15% better on a consistent basis, and you'll make a major impact on your institution. And then finally, and this is where hierarchy does matter, whether you like it or not, you're the leadership face of your organization. When you hire somebody, when you don't hire somebody, when you answer a phone call, when you don't answer the phone call, when you speak at a meeting and you don't speak at a meeting, you're the leadership face. It's one of the things I found hardest about being at the BBC, by the way, is that you are never off duty. So I probably worked 70 hours a week at least when I was at the BBC, and then I would finally get home to my little pub in North London, and people would go, "Didn't think much of EastEnders this week." I think, oh, give me a break. But you can't. You have to say we've got some great storylines coming up, and, you know, Doc Cotton's coming back, and, yeah. Anyway, that goal was offside in match. Oh, no! You're never off duty. And that's really hard. Now, I want to spend 10 minutes trying to convince you that authenticity is an idea whose time has come. Let me give you the gloom first. Trust indices in the Western world, and I'm defining Western as everywhere touched by capitalism, are at an all-time low. We don't trust our lawyers. We don't trust our accountants. They shred documents. We don't trust our politicians, hence the growth of populism. We don't trust our business leaders. We don't trust our bankers. This is a real crisis. Here's some of the symptoms of our moral malaise. That sickest of symbols, Big Brother, when borderline psychopaths and exhibitionists cavort in front of an isolated and atomized audience. And do you know what we call it? Reality television. It's now broadcast in 82 countries. Loss of meaning, captured by these numbers. The 347s, who can tell me what they refer to? I got this really quickly at the American HR conference. No pressure. The 347s come to roughly 100,000. I'll do what I do to my MBA class. I'm waiting. Brilliant. Have you met my brother? Yeah. It's my older brother, but never mind, yeah. It's the shape of the old corporate career, isn't it? 47 hours, 47 weeks, 47 years, at which point you leave as a grade 22. Well, that's not the shape of work for most of you, is it? I'll bet most of you work at least 60 hours a week. I've worked more than 60 hours a week for 20 years, by the way. I don't say that as a statement of pride. I say it as a statement of necessity. I mean, maybe I'm a slow worker, but I don't think so. We've all become Americans, so we don't take our holidays. I mean, we do go on holiday, but I'll bet you we all do this. Darling, I'm just going for a walk in the garden. Beep, 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 beep. We're on our smartphones confirming that the world can't live without us. And the new career, by the way, is not 100,000 hours, it's 50,000 hours. To get to 50, you only need 17. See, for how long have we said in HR careers peak earlier? Well, if careers peak earlier, what follows as a mathematical necessity? You are plateaued for longer. For some of you, your careers are already over. You just don't know it yet. The UHR conference in Newcastle was the high spot. It's all downhill from now on. And then, of course, there are low-paid women, mainly women, working 25 hours for 25 weeks forever. Then we have Hillary Clinton's favored gig economy, but in another world, we might call that 0 hours contract. There are, I think, last time I looked, just over 1 million people in the UK working on 0 hours contracts. Makes it impossible for them to budget. Makes it impossible for them to ever own a property. Now, in any one organization, you could have people occupying all of those worlds, and that removes meaning from people's lives. Loss of community, captured by a wonderful American book by a man called Robert Putnam called Bowling Alone. It gets its title from this observation. Bowling has never been as popular in America as it is today, but bowling leagues have collapsed. People bowl alone. And he charts the decline of sociability in America. Parent-teacher associations, the Boston Cycling Club, the Cincinnati Butterfly Society, they're all in decline. We're increasingly isolated in the pressure cooker of our nuclear families with our 2.4 children and the box in the corner. This is not a recipe for mental health. He's very gloomy about this, and so am I, by the way. I think it is partly what's fueled the rise of populism. But it could be an opportunity. Great organizations will become community builders. And of course, in the higher education sector, there has been considerable focus on the notion of the civic community. I was rather struck last night. I went on a little exploration, as I always do. I found a bar around the corner. It's called the Central Bar. I recommend it to you. It's really interesting, and you'll know that there's this lovely building on the river here called the Sage, where they teach music classes. So a whole bunch of people had come from their music class, and they were in the little public bar playing folk songs and singing along and playing their guitars. And up on the roof terrace was a bunch of saxophonists who'd also been having their saxophone lesson, and they were jamming on the roof terrace. I was thinking, these are the ingredients of community. Well, universities can be like that too. They can be community builders. And then, of course, loss of trust. By the way, I could have filled this slide up several times over. I used to just have the Enron symbol. Actually, I haven't looked in the Financial Times or the Wall Street Journal yet this morning, but I'll make a prediction. Another corporate scandal has been exposed. My wife is still struggling to get her head around this scandal. She's driven VWs all her life, you know, Polos, Golfs, Passats, Charans when the children were small. She now discovers that one of the world's great automobile manufacturers has been systematically poisoning people. It's pretty shocking, isn't it? It's unsurprising that people have fallen out of love with organizations. Authenticity is an idea whose time has come. People want to be led by a real person who they can trust. And a lot follows from being a real person, by the way. Real people bleed. Real people cry. Real people lose their tempers. So I've been talking about things that are going down. Here's some things that are going up. There's some generational change. Now, I'm a sociologist by training. I'm very skeptical about some of this research. So if someone says to me, 25-year-olds are different from 45-year-olds, I don't find that surprising. The really interesting question is, what will the 25-year-olds look like when they're 45? So most of the research has been done taking a still photograph, and what we really need is a cine camera. But nevertheless, something real is taking place. I've got 3 children, and 2 of them are millennials. I certainly recognize this one. I think I recognize this as well. My eldest daughter has inherited my workaholic tendencies, but my second daughter is much more obsessed with work-life balance and so on. So there's something real going on, and you may have a view about that. And then I talked earlier about a book I wrote called Clever. And this is the growth of the knowledge economy, in which higher education is absolutely central. Cambridge now has, I think this is right, 16 businesses with a turnover greater than $1 billion. And by the way, that's the future of the UK economy, isn't it? We ain't going to become big in coal mining again. The coal mines are flooded. We're not going to become great shipbuilders. We're going to be in high-end engineering. We're going to be in professional services. We're going to be in green technologies. We're going to be in pharmaceuticals. That's the future of the UK economy, in which these people, the clevers, are really important. There's just one, I won't go through this in any great detail. I just want to bring this one to you, is that when you lead them well, they won't thank you. I don't often go back to the organizations I've left, but I do occasionally go back to the BBC for a leaving party or, a retirement do or something like that. And people often say, you're Gareth Jones, aren't you? I say, yeah. Say, you used to be the HR director, didn't you? I say, yeah. Say, you weren't too bad. You didn't get in the way. And by the way, I regard that as a great compliment. Many HR directors get in the way. I wrote a piece, you'll be pleased to know, that's unpublished called Close Down the Department of Rules. Who do you think I was talking about? In short, leadership's in short supply. I spend quite a lot of my time with chief executives, and I often say to them, Madam Chief Executive, what is your biggest problem? They never say to me, supply chain problems in Taiwan, uncertainty about the Brazilian soybean crop. They never say that. They say, do you know what my biggest problem is, Gareth? There's not enough leaders around here. And I'll make a prediction about your institutions, whichever one it is. You'll find that some schools of studies outperform others, markedly. Morale is better, retention's better, engagement is higher. Do you know what the key variable is? Leadership. You'll find a few people there who've got leadership ability. Anyway, I always say, don't worry, Madam Chief Executive. I can fix this for you. Won't take long. 3 weeks. Be very expensive, but don't worry. And then I look inside their organizations, and what do I find? In my bleak Celtic moments, I often think of organizations, especially big ones, as machines not for the production of leadership, but machines for the production of mind-numbing conformity, as you are measured against yet another global leadership competence model. I'm looking forward to a bonfire of them. When I first prepared this slide, my colleague Rob Goffey said, you can't use The Office. Only the Brits laugh at The Office. And then the American version of the show came out and became a big hit show. Do you know what? I can't watch The Office. It's too close to reality. I know David Brent. You might well be sitting next to him. Right, that's the end of the bad news, okay? Here's some good news. A few years ago, the Times newspaper of London published a list of the 50 most influential business thinkers in the world. Number 1 was Bill Gates. Number 2 was Michael Porter, the Harvard strategy professor. Number 33, Gareth Jones. Thank you. There's nothing like spontaneous applause. And that was nothing like spontaneous applause. Anyway, I was 10 places above Al Gore. I was really chuffed. I rang my mother in Wales, and she organized a street party. And as far as I know, the street party is still going on. And then I discovered who's number 16. Dilbert. What is it? It's a Bible to organizational cynicism, isn't it? They call it a team-building event. It's just an excuse for a free drink. They call it an open, honest annual appraisal. It's a tissue of lies. They call it the UHR conference. It's just a shopping trip in Newcastle. And what's the biggest problem in our organization? Cynicism. There's probably some in this room. I might have to apply a little alcohol to find it, but I could. And the antidote to cynicism? Leadership. So we want it, but we kill it. We research it, but we don't understand it. I'm going to deal with the research now, and I'm going to deal with the research fairly quickly. And I'm going to deal with the modern research on leadership. That's to say, the last 120 years. But it's worth noticing that all societies produce theories of leadership. We could talk about Roman theories, Greek theories, Aztec theories, Maasai theories, Viking theories, Celtic theories. So the concept of leadership is quite close to the core ideology of a society. We've been asking the wrong questions. We've been asking this question, who makes it to the top? Now, this is a very interesting question. Why does it tell us nothing about leadership? This is my test to see if you've been listening. It's often the most depressing moment of my week. Asking who makes it the top's interesting. Why does it tell you nothing about leadership? Very good. You met my sister? Yeah. Leadership's profoundly non-hierarchical. Asking who makes it the top's interesting doesn't tell you anything about leadership. I mean, would you like to know who makes it to the top? I'll just show you the first line. About half of you will be really happy. Firstborn, and especially first sons, are massively overrepresented at the top of organizations. Why do you think that's the case? Assuming they don't inherit the business. How do parents treat first children? They fuss over them, don't they? They do this, don't they? What's your first name?
Elliot.
Elliot. Quick! Neighbors! Come in! It's amazing! Elliot's picked up a spoon. He's only 16. The boy's a genius. And we take multiple photographs of them and we film them and so on. My second daughter said to me recently, Dad, why are there no photographs of me as a baby? And by the way, there aren't. I deeply regret it now. I said, because we used all the film on the first one. Who's got a personality a bit like Alexander the Great, I have to say. And then here's the other factors. Some are really obvious, high achiever. Some are very interesting, high energy levels. We now have a lot of hard scientific data which shows that effective leaders have high energy levels. Now, I'm not presenting this as if this was earth-shatteringly, wonderful news. I think it's pretty obvious. You can't do this if you're the leader. Listen, I'll be the leader Monday to Wednesday, but I'm knackered Thursdays and Fridays, so Sandra will be taking over. You can't do that. If you're the leader, you've got to be the last one to give up, haven't you? Now, the practical question becomes, how do you get high energy levels? Well, we've got good data on this. Diet. Eat foods low in the glycemic index. If you don't know this research, just Google glycemic index. Eat foods which release sugar slowly into your body over the course of the day. If you do it for 6 months, I promise you, your energy levels will go up dramatically. 2, exercise. Now, this doesn't mean that to be a leader you need to go to the gym 5 days a week, but it does mean get off the bus one stop earlier and walk home. Take the dog out. Get your tennis racket out the weekend. Kick the ball around with the kids. Take the stairs, not the elevator. There's lots of ways in which you can exercise. In fact, some of you are relatively young, but for middle-aged people, if you did about 25 minutes exercise a day, not continuous, that will have a major impact on your energy levels. Then the research gets a bit murky. Some people think you should control your caffeine intake. I don't drink coffee after lunch. That's my sort of compromise. And then there's some deeply flawed research which says you should control your alcohol intake. But you can safely ignore that. There are profound methodological problems with that research. And then, of course, we've been asking this question, what do those at the top think? So if you go into a business bookshop and you look at the shelf of books on leadership, that's what most of them are like. Learn to lead like Richard Branson, free sweater enclosed. Learn to lead like Bernard Tapie, free testosterone implants. The 157 books called How to Become Jack Welch. I'm fed up with them. They don't work. This doesn't work. We in Central HR Leadership Development have been monitoring you very carefully. We think you should become more like Jack Welch. What do you think her chances of success are? 0. You don't become a more effective leader by becoming more like someone else. Absolutely not. Now, they say some interesting things. The second one worries me about British society, ability to work with a variety of people, because we're moving towards a kind of culture where we send clever people to school with other clever people. And when they leave clever schools, they go to elite universities where they mix with very clever people. And if they're still clever at the end of it, we send them to elite business schools like London Business School. Well, guess what they end up being good at? Working with clever people. Well, it's fine if they go to McKinsey or Goldman Sachs. If they go and work for Aldi or Lidl, they're useless. I stopped teaching leadership to my MBA students because I realized half of them would never lead anything. They might get rich. They might become derivatives traders and so on, but they can only work with people just like themselves. Now, we have some countervailing tendencies, don't we, in the UK? We have the gap year, where we send our children off for a year before they go to university. Well, that's good. If they go off digging latrines in Sierra Leone, that's great. If they go off snowboarding with Sophie and Tristan, doesn't help at all. Hi, Sophie, see you in Sydney, let's go swimming with the sharks. There's a kind of bourgeois bubble, isn't there, encircling the globe. That's not a rich and diverse experience. And then there's that word early. Some organizations make people wait too long for leadership. I'm sure many of us, I certainly have sat in dozens of talent meetings. And it really annoys me, and I'm afraid HR people say it the most, we don't know enough about them yet. They've been working for us for 10 years. If we don't know enough by now, we haven't been watching. Give people a chance. Early experiences of leadership. It doesn't mean throw people in at the deep end and see if they sink. It means early experience with a safety net. Curiously, the organization that does this best is the armed forces. If any of us joined the army this afternoon, within 2 years we'd have leadership experience. A better question might be, and I'm going to ask you this question now, what do followers want? What do the people you aspire to lead want from you as a leader? Now, on your table groups now, I just want you to have a very quick conversation about this, but I'm going to put a constraint on the conversation. I just want you to come back with 4 words, okay? So what do the people you aspire to lead want from you as a leader? Right, quick, intense conversations. I'm just going to sample a few tables. We haven't got time to go through all of the tables, but I would like you to continue this discussion. Could we start with the table in the far corner, please? What are your 4 words?
We have a couple of slash answers, so it might have gone over 4. So we have clarity stroke articulacy, credibility, to be consistent but fair, and integrity.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. German is a better language for this, isn't it? Because you can just slam the words together and make a compound noun. Could we have a look at this table here, please? Thanks.
We said consistency, direction, trust, and authenticity.
Very good. Thank you. Excellent. Leave me. I'll be the.
Okay, we have clarity, optimism, trust, and most importantly of all, we felt cake. or chocolate in the alternative. I think that's that.
Okay. We'll just take one more. Is there a table that feels like they've got some divergent words? Actually, where are our American colleagues? Let's have the table with the American colleagues and see if they come up with Trump.
We won't go there until tomorrow afternoon. Compassion is really, I think, something we look for. We talked about experience is really important for us too.
Go on, keep going.
Some of the other ones we talked about, openness, approachability, trust is huge. We find today that our workforce looks for people that can relate to us.
Fine. Good. Thank you very much. Right. I'm going to stop there. Let me just tell you, I've done this exercise all over the world. When I say all over the world, I haven't done it in India. So I've never done it there. But I've done it in Japan, I've done it in China, I've done it all over Southeast Asia, Latin America, North America, and all over Europe. When I started to do it in Asia, everyone said to me, it'll all be different in Asia. It's not. Same words, by the way. I'm not saying all your words are the same, but if we spent an hour on this, we'd get it to 6 words, wouldn't we? There's some good news there. We know what followers want. Here's the bad news. It's a tough old list, isn't it? You have to wake up in the morning and go, time to be inspiring and authentic. It's quite hard. And, by the way, you've got the payroll to run. We interviewed about 1,000, just under 1,000 followers. And it was 962, because we never quite got to 1,000. They sell lots of different things, but of course, here's the magic of social science. Their responses are patterned. This is what they said they wanted. Community, They want to be part of something. The Strathclyde team, the HR team, the audit team, the diversity team. They want to be able to put their arms around it and say, this is us. See, you could argue that in societies like ours, the things we used to affiliate to, class, church, political party, are getting much weaker. I came across this odd statistic the other day. 40% of the replica football shirts in the UK are sold to men over 40, including me. And if you have to believe in Tottenham Hotspur, you are truly desperate, believe me. So, are you a community builder at work? Followers want significance, recognition, appreciation. Now, sadly, this is one of the areas of human behavior where there are rather marked cultural variations. Brits, Danes, Dutch, Northern Europeans aren't very good at it. I'll show you a senior English civil servant giving praise. What's your surname?
Tevlin, sorry.
Tevlin. Your work is quite satisfactory. Thank you. What's your first name?
Sylvia.
That means Sylvia's on the verge of a Nobel Prize. We now find that Sylvia's guilty of major fraud. Tevlin, your work is less than satisfactory. Now, you'll think I'm making this up. I'm not. I used to teach on the top management program at the Civil Service College. That's what they were like. After a day of this, they said to me, Gareth, we're not very good at this, are we? I said, no, not really. They said, can you help us get better? I said, yeah. So I ran a special program called Giving Significance. So this is what they were like after 2 days of lights, cameras, actions, role play. Tevlin, your work is quite good. That wasn't over the top, was it? These are people who go home and they say to their partners say to them, you never say you love me anymore. You were informed 20 years ago. If there's any change, I'll email you. Could you please send the children in for a team briefing? Do you know people like that? I do. I know people like that in universities, by the way. Followers want excitement, inspiration, direction, clarity, purpose. And finally, this is a word you use, followers want authenticity, consistency, trust, respect. Now here comes the first really difficult part of the conference. By the way, this says exciting, not exiting. See, how will people feel when you get back from the conference? Well, they do this. Oh, great news, team. Sandra's back. Sandra's back from the conference. She'll come back with loads of great new ideas. Good news, Sylvie. Sandra's back. Or will they be doing this? Oh, no. Oh, no, Sandra's back. I wonder what the miserable old bat will be moaning about this week. Are you a source of energy to your team, or are you a drain on energy? Are you a positron or a negatron? Do you give people energy, or do you take it away? I know some senior executives in organizations who walk into a room and energy levels drop. They're like energy black holes. They're like corporate dementors from Harry Potter. They suck the soul out of you. I know others, by the way, who walk into a room and energy levels go up. They go, do you know what? We can really improve our student satisfaction scores. Do you know what? We can start publishing in grade A journals. Do you know what? We can make things happen here. Are you authentic? Do you take your real self to work? Or do you save it for home? Or church? Or the golf club? My wife often says to me, the pub gets the best of you. I have some sympathy with her view. Who decides whether you're exciting and authentic? Who decides? No, not you. This doesn't work. I am really, really exciting. Don't you agree? It's what we call in sociology an ascribed characteristic. It's not claimed characteristic, it's given to you by others. It's what your followers think that decides whether you're authentic and exciting. Here's the problem with the research. We've got 100 years research on leaders. Now, this slide's really important. We're not really interested in leaders, are we? We're interested in leadership. And leadership is a relationship between the leaders and the led. Agreed? Now, if it's a relationship, it should be as much illuminated by sociological concepts as it is psychological ones. We have 100 years of research which is excessively psychological. So, how do we understand leadership? I'm going to begin with some axioms. 1, leadership's contextual. Leadership in a steel mill is different from leadership in a university. Leadership in a law firm is different from leadership in a music company. Context matters. Leadership's relational. Can't do it on your own. This team have just done some open heart surgery. About 5 hours. We filmed it and then speeded it up to show the whole thing in 5 minutes. Do you know what you see? Hundreds of vital social interactions. Heart surgery is a team game. So is leadership. One of my slightly annoying things about HR functions sometimes is they're too siloed. They're not joined up. So we recruit clever people, but we don't treat them like they're clever when they arrive. Or our payment system doesn't match our development system. It's not joined up. And then finally, leadership's non-hierarchical. These are young US Marines moving into Fallujah from the Airborne Division. We looked at 14 military organizations. They all said the same thing. The moment we move into action, you cannot rely on hierarchy. See, armies can't do this. First mortar bomb lands. All the leaders killed. Well, the troops can't do this. Oh, well, we better wait for personnel to send some new leaders. They have to reinvent themselves from the bottom up. Now, the $64,000 question. What do authentic leaders do? Because in the end, leadership's about actions. I have academic colleagues who talk about the leadership mindset. It slightly irritates me. I say, your followers are not mind readers. I'm simpler than that. I'm interested in behavior, actions. What do people do? Now, you'll see that the actions can be deduced from the axioms. So if leadership is contextual, leaders must sense situations. They must be able to walk into the chemistry department and say, morale's a bit flat. They must be able to walk into the IT department and go, it's flying in here, what's going on? To use an English idiom, they can smell the gravy. Which is why I think, you know, there's been this big trend in HR towards what you might call data analytics, which I think is interesting and so on. And I'm not anachronistic about it. If we can get better data, great. It's no substitute for walking around. It's no substitute for walking around. Now, some of you will be naturally good at this, some of you won't. And put it in your diary. I'm just taking a stroll. I'm just going to find out what it feels like in this place. I'm going to smell the gravy. But leaders don't just sense situations, they take symbolic actions to change the situation. So, what does this photograph tell us about leadership? But by the way, who is this? Yeah, it's not Tiger Woods, okay? I say that because I was in America recently and about half the audience thought it was Tiger Woods. That was a pretty worrying experience, actually. So this is Nelson Mandela. How many years was he in prison? 27 years in Robben Island, designed to break your health. He gets released. He wins the first free and fair elections in South Africa's history. He gets a lucky break. They win the Rugby Union World Cup. Admittedly, they gave the other side food poisoning, but that's another story. And then he does something remarkable. I might cry as I tell this story, by the way. This is the only political thing I've stayed true to all my life. I joined the anti-apartheid movement when I was 14. And one of my most treasured possessions is a letter from Nelson Mandela, which is addressed to dear friend of freedom. Doesn't get much better than that, does it? He takes the most despised symbol of the apartheid regime, the Springbok jersey, and he makes it his own. A friend of mine was in the audience. He's a professor of philosophy, though he's a philosopher with an interest in high explosives. He spent most of his life in exile. He said, the moment Mandela walked into the stadium with the Springbok jersey on, a shiver went down my spine, and the new South Africa was born. Now listen, I don't want to set the bar too high for you people. If only half of you become as successful as Nelson Mandela as a leader, then the university sector is in good hands. Now, that's a very dramatic one, and he's a past master at symbolism. This comes from the day that Lehman Brothers went bust in 2008. And I was listening to BBC Radio 4, and they were interviewing the finance director of Tesco's. I said, I'm sorry, we've got some breaking news. Lehman Brothers has gone bankrupt. And the finance director of Tesco said, great. We'll move into banking faster. And leaders embrace moments of crisis and turn them into moments of opportunity. So leaders sense situations and they take symbolic actions to change them. They identify with their followers. This is a hard bit. They get close, but they keep their distance. The original idea here comes from the work of a German sociologist called George Simmel, who uses the concept of social distance to measure the degree of intimacy between individuals. So leaders do this. Hi, Elliot. Did you have a holiday this year?
Yes.
Where did you go?
France.
Whereabouts?
In South Collioure.
Oh, is that southwest or is it near the Côte d'Azur?
Near the Côte d'Azur.
Okay, National Front territory then. Yeah. If I'm the leader, what's the point of this conversation? Why am I investing time in this conversation?
Building a relationship.
I'm building a relationship. I'm also collecting data a bit. If he can go on holiday to the Côte d'Azur, we're probably paying him too much. Yeah? Here's the next bit of the story. My holiday was a disaster this year, Elliot. My wife had hurt her back playing tennis, and I said, don't worry, darling, we'll have a quiet holiday in the UK. So we went down to Dorset, and it was a cycling holiday when we got there. She was in pain most of the time. Why am I telling him this? I'm sharing. I'm a human being just like you. I have crap family holidays just like everyone else. Here's the next bit of the conversation. Elliot, the succession plan was due by Wednesday of last week. Understand? I'm not so good at this, by the way. We all have a default mode. My default mode is definitely closeness. In my professional life, I've fired quite a lot of people. When I fire them, I practice social distance. Come in. Please sit down. Ooh, they know. They know. Now, effective leaders get close in order to find out what's really going on and to build relationships. And they get distant in order to confront performance issues. Now, this is a really hard idea. I'll give you another way of thinking about it. For those of you who've got children, are you close or distant? Close or distant? Close. Okay, first thing to say, historically specific answer. If I'd asked that question of a bourgeois audience in 1880, what would the answer have been? Distant. Children would be seen and not heard. Are you ever distant with your children? I hope so. You see 5-year-old Johnny walking near the edge of the cliff. You don't do this. Johnny, let me explain the effects of gravity on young bodies. The first time your teenage daughter comes home drunk, you practice social distance. The 50th time, you start going out with her. This is what I've done with mine. You need to show your difference. We don't follow people like us. If the leader's like us, what's the question mark in our mind? Why aren't I the leader? I'm just like Sandra. I can be the leader. Oh, this is Richard Branson. He's pretty good at radiating difference, but there's all kinds of things that work. This is probably the most powerful woman in Europe. Angie baby. Mutti. The first former East German to be Chancellor of United Germany, also a woman. Watch her carefully when next time you see some video coverage of her. She uses her differences really well. You need to know and show yourself enough. Some people will say that effective leadership requires complete self-knowledge. I don't agree. You just need to know what you don't need to be Sigmund Freud. You just need to know what works for you. What works for him as a leader. Keep it clean. This is a mixed audience. We couldn't afford to interview him for the book, by the way, but we interviewed 23 people who'd met him. They all said the same thing. He made me feel like the most important person in the room. And he held my hand a little too long. He's good at this. You need to reveal weakness. When you reveal weakness, you give people a chance to help you. Bruce Springsteen spoke very interestingly about his battle with depressive illness on Desert Island Discs. It's very touching, by the way. I even started to listen to the music differently after I knew that. Effective leaders use their emotions to liberate the energy of others. I didn't write this, by the way. Who knows where this comes from? I'm sure you've read the book. It comes from Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, which, by the way, if you can't find a book by me, is well worth reading. Trouble is, it's got two difficult verbs in it, use and liberate. In order to use your emotions, you need to know them. Some of us have been socialized not to know our emotions. Secondly, liberate. When you are leading well, your team is pulling you along, not you pushing them along. If your leadership behavior is to push all the time, do you know what happens to you? You get very tired. You also get learnt incapacity because people wait for you to push. And finally, you get pushback. You get resistance. You need to communicate differences, weaknesses, vision, and values. If I had to pick one skill in the modern world which you have to be brilliant at, it's this one. Because we live in a world where we're inundated with data, aren't we? Smartphones, laptops, tablets, digital TV channels. So how do you become a compelling communicator? Tell stories. Jesus Christ communicated mainly through the notion of parables. I'll bet you that for all the Christians in the room here, we could remember 10 parables between us. But it's not just Christianity. Hinduism drips with great stories, as does Buddhism, Islam. All the world's great religions are full of good stories. Become a good storyteller. Choose your channel. I couldn't resist putting this one in. This is a tweet from Donald Trump. My fingers are long and beautiful, as it has been well documented are various other parts of my body. Welcome to the President of the United States. This is Hillary Clinton, a conventional kind of political gathering. She never seemed at ease, did she? Hi, it's me, Hillary. I'm really nice, and I'm so happy to be here. She didn't find the right way of connecting with the American people. Trump's use of social media did. You need to conform enough. I wrote an article a little while ago, we're nearly finished, by the way, called The Paradox of the Authentic Chameleon. And its central idea is chameleons adapt to context, but they remain chameleons. The editors of Harvard Business Review said we don't want lizards in the magazine, so we had to change the title to Managing Authenticity. But it's the same idea. And in the article, we tell a story, a week in the life of Tony Blair. It's this week. It's the week he goes to Singapore to help London win the Olympic bid. So he wheedles votes out of the IOC, and actually he helps London win. Chirac helps Paris lose. Blair helps London win. He flies back. He goes to Glen Eagles to chair the G7. He's the global statesman. What happened next? The bombs went off on the London Underground. Was anyone in London that day? Were you scared? I was scared. I lived through 30 years of the IRA bombing campaign without being scared, but that day I was scared. The idea of being blown up is scary, but the idea of being blown up on the Underground, Piccadilly line is not a good place to meet God, is it? Jubilee line, maybe, but yeah. I don't want to end it all in Wood Green. He flew back and he made an emotional speech to the nation, in which he said exactly what we needed to hear. We will not let them change our way of life. Being authentic does not mean being the same all the time. Our failure to understand that has destroyed our understanding of authenticity. Now, is he an authentic chameleon or just a chameleon? That's a judgment call. 3 tests. Consistency between words and deeds. If you fail this, I think you've had it. This is Anita Roddick, the founder of Body Shop. She campaigned against the animal testing of cosmetics all her life. Secondly, a common thread in your role performances. This is Richard Branson launching V2 Records, expressing his interest in personal jet travel, launching Virgin Brides, expressing his interest. He's good at this. And then finally, comfort with origins. You can change your future, but you can't change your past. Your past made you who you are. Now, our original article, Why Should Anyone Be Led by You, won the McKinsey Prize for the best article in Harvard Business Review, which I'm very proud of, by the way, because Europeans almost never win, and I'll probably never win again, though I have come second, which, if you're me, is not very nice. The reason it won is it's got a good ending. I'd give the article 7 or 8 out of 10. Get to the last paragraph, it tells you the answer. If you want to be a more effective leader, be yourself more with skill. 5 words. No more reading business books. No more going to UHR conferences. Be yourself more with skill. Now, you'd think people could remember that, wouldn't you? They can't. We know they can't because we asked them. They remember, be yourself. So they go back to their team and say, team, I've got some great news for you. I found out to be a great leader. I'm going to be myself. Oh, no. We sent him to Harvard to be cured. He's come back exactly the same. Sometimes it's worse. They do this. Team, I found the answer to great leadership. I'm going to be myself more. Oh, no. He was bad enough before, and I'm going to be himself more. They always forget with skill. Who plays tennis? Do you get better when you practice? Who cooks? Do you get better when you practice? Who wants to be a better lover? You're not allowed to ask that in America, by the way, okay? So forget that. Who wants to be a more effective leader?
We do.
Practice, practice, practice. Effective leadership is a skillful, authentic role performance with the capacity to transform organizations and enrich lives. It's a skillful, authentic role performance with the capacity to transform organizations and enrich lives. It's always difficult, but it's well worth the effort. Thank you.